Hey, what's going on, guys? Lux here with another video. Today I'm going to be basically explaining the theory from the new Cloverfield movie, Cloverfield Paradox, and how there's basically a bunch of dimensions with different scenarios on them. Now, before I begin, if I could even speak, basically, if you haven't seen Cloverfield Paradox, the movie discusses how there are different dimensions with different scenarios, and basically, before I make this video again and sound like a jackass, to explain, there were two other Cloverfield movies released before this movie, obviously, Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane, and then Cloverfield Paradox, which is the newest movie. Those movies sort of are in the same universe. It's a weird thing, I don't know, but you can call it a cinematic universe if you want, but they take place theoretically in different dimensions, which is the only way you could explain these movies. But basically the theory goes is that because in this newest movie, the Cloverfield Paradox, the kaiju, or the giant monster that was introduced in the first movie, but it's not in the second movie, but for some reason it's in the third movie, it's basically the kaiju is now in almost all the dimensions, even though it's technically only in half, and then like in the other, like, it's like I'm doing this all over again. So basically, after the Cloverfield Paradox movie came out, there are now theoretically 4 different dimensions. And I guess to label these, let's call Dimension A the main dimension of Cloverfield Paradox. That we'll call that Dimension A, and then we'll call the other dimension, which the main characters go to in Cloverfield Paradox, Dimension B, and then in this 10 Cloverfield Lane, we'll just call that Dimension C, and then in the first Cloverfield, we'll just call that Dimension D. So, with Dimension B basically being the first one, that's basically a dimension where the kaiju is sort of woken up by humanity, and because of drilling underwater to get some slusho shit. That's like one of the only dimensions, as far as we know, that has the giant kaiju. And then in Dimension C, that's one of the dimensions that does not have a kaiju, which is the giant sea creature. They technically have aliens for some reason. I don't know. So that's like comparing that to the first dimension, or technically Dimension D. They are basically the same theoretical dimension, but only with different scenarios and a technically different timeline. And then in Dimension B, which is the other dimension in Cloverfield Paradox, that dimension is basically the opposite, or I don't know, because it's never explained if they have a kaiju in their universe while they're at war, but basically that's a different dimension, with Russia invading basically every single country, which is kind of weird, and then it's like they have no oil and they literally have no power. So basically they're invading and they have no power. And then the main dimension, Dimension A from Cloverfield Paradox, that is the one where this sort of theory starts. And basically, since the Shepherd, which is the giant space station in Cloverfield Paradox, is used, it sort of creates this giant effect across all dimensions, or all the 4 dimensions that we know of, basically, and it sort of transports the kaiju to their dimension. And I don't know. I mean, there's no easy way to explain this, but basically the kaiju was teleported to their dimension, or they either woke it up with the Shepherd because it probably displaced a bunch of energy which affected the Earth, or created some kind of giant earthquake underwater, and it basically woke up the giant kaiju. So, I don't know. The movie is sort of confusing on explaining how the kaiju is actually in Dimension A. or why it's in Dimension A, or if it's been there in Dimension A and nobody's actually found it since now. But basically, in Dimension A, the kaiju basically makes a cameo once or twice in the movie, like halfway through the movie, basically, and at the end. That's not the point. I mean, there's nothing really else for me to explain. I don't even know why I made this video, but if you haven't seen Cloverfield, I suggest you go see it to basically explain what the kaiju is sort of. Shit. I mean, I don't know. This whole entire cinematic universe thing is like really confusing because like they haven't even explained it. But I mean, then they're making like a 4th movie that's coming out this fall, which is gonna be a clusterfuck. But I'm probably gonna watch all the other movies, and then when the 4th one comes out, I'll make a video about it, and then it'll probably explain everything about the kaiju. But until then, it's gonna be, and that's gonna be a really long time. But until then, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.